Yeah, there we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Dave Wilson, Ring of Hire Show. Hey, I got a great show tonight. I got some great guests. Joel Villa, Mr. Joel Villa. How you doing, Joel?
Good, doing great, David. Thank you.
All right. It's always great to have him on here. And we have a new person on the show tonight, Deontay Dixon, all the way from near Reading, Pennsylvania.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're gonna take it easy on him tonight, Joel. Yeah, right. Tonight, everybody, we're going to be talking about leadership, but you know the drill right after this video. Go. Okay, maybe it didn't go. Let's see what happens here. See, it's always something. Still want to fight after that.
Yeah.
Gives me action movie vibes.
Doesn't it? It freaking you stare at it, and like I say, I picked all the words that you see on LinkedIn, and that guy just had a great vision with it, and he just pounded that right through there, especially the bad boss, everything. I'm like, you go, man, you go. Holy crow. All right, we already got Joel, we got Mr. Rob in the house already.
All right, Rob, what's going on?
All right, he's ready to go. All right, guys. Hey, tonight we're going to talk about leadership, everybody. And I know it's Joel's favorite topic, same as mine and Deontay. Leadership, you know, we promote people based on, you know, how good they are, if they're really a performer. You know, I've even done that in the past. Wow, this might make a good leader or, you know, supervisor. And you pick that out. Some of the times when they do that, that always doesn't mean they're going to be a good supervisor. I mean, I've always had that to where it's like, wow, you really got to put, I believe you really have to put a lot of training into someone new. Do you agree, Joel? I mean,
yes, absolutely. In fact, I got a fun story with you guys. We'll get into that a little later, but no, I completely agree. If you see somebody, if you're promoting within and you see that somebody has the great potential to do something, to be a good leader, you definitely want to train them up to be at that level.
Yeah, to do that. What do you feel about that, Deontay?
No, I agree 100% with Joel. I mean, I think, you know, that's kind of the first step. You know, want to see that they're performing or they're exceeding expectations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready for that next step. So, as Joel was saying, you got to train them up to be prepared if you do decide to go that route. So,
I think it comes back to I always say, listen, you know, when people say things are going smooth at work, you know, they're not going smooth. You're having issues. It's the same issues over and over and over. It's where the leadership begins. You know, as I say evolved now because Andre Young, as you evolve, as you get older, I'm gonna put it out here tonight. Every single thing we probably talk about, I've made those mistakes. I'm willing to admit, because if you don't admit to that you don't make these mistakes, I don't think you really learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think when you put that supervisor in there and all of a sudden you still got issues, you got to stop back and say, man, did I train that person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think also when it comes down to it, you can also make mistakes, but you can also watch others make those mistakes, so that way you don't make those mistakes. You know, be the pardon the analogy, would be the good Indian, so you could be the chief later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that one. Oh boy,
I like that.
Dante, for you to top that one about the Indians, I like it.
I don't think I can. We'll circle back to that one a little later.
Yeah, Dante, if you promoted a new supervisor and you were having issues and everything, what kind of advice would you give somebody being new, brand new, right into it?
Don't be. I think the biggest one is don't be afraid to ask questions. The first thing I would do, I think, is look look where I missed a step. If I'm promoting that individual, maybe I was too hastily in putting that person in that position. So the first thing you got to look is where you missed it. And then you got to kind of go to giving that advice of, hey, don't be afraid to ask questions where you feel, you might be missing some things, or I haven't prepared you properly for, this portion of the job. So I think
it comes back on you.
It always comes back on you. You put that person in a position for a reason. Obviously they have to be doing something correct to be put in that position. And, that should be a good indication that once they are properly trained, that they're going to be able to, continue doing a good job in their new role.
Yeah. I always feel that if you enjoy like getting rid of people, terminating, and if you enjoy that authority and you don't have a gut, like if you're not nervous, I don't even care at my age. When you're confronting people, you say you're having a meeting the next day, you got to let somebody go, and if you enjoy it, something's wrong. But if you're not nervous yourself, I think that's where I say to myself, wow, I can't let my guard down.
Yep.
Because that's when you start making those mistakes, because you need to be nervous. I don't care. I mean, that's me. I still get nervous to this day if I have something going on. And I think everybody in that meeting feels the same way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can't take. There's sometimes you can have certain joys in getting rid of somebody, and that's when you have those really, I guess piss poor performers. Yeah. But then there's other times you have to get rid of somebody. You're just like, man, it is like one time. One of the companies I was working for, I just came in for my shift. I came back from vacation. They're like, hey, we're getting rid of this guy. You need to go fire him. I'm like, what? Why am I doing that? I'm not doing this. Like, I'm just ruining this guy's life. He doesn't even know me.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this?
No, and it's true, because that's where it's kind of challenging if somebody likes management. If you like that management, man, that you can thrive on that stuff. That drill. Rob says some people aren't meant to be a leader, and Rob, I agree with that 1000%. Dante, if you have a new supervisor making mistakes over and over and over, what do you feel that you should do to him by getting him the tools, getting him everything he needs? But how would you step into like a one-on-one and work with someone?
I think the first thing I would do is take a day with the supervisor to see kind of their habits in play, see exactly what they're doing and where that step is that they're missing. And then I think it's just a matter of coaching. My biggest thing has always been to lead by example. So, if it's to the point where
they watch you.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely do. So I think the first step is to get in there, see where they're missing the mistake, but you can also show them, you have them, you can go to that supervisor and obviously you've been in that position because you were in the position that they were in previously, most of the time, at least. So you can take a step back and revert to your old role and say, this is how we want to do it. Take them, step by step and show them the way. And
I like how you say that, show them. And you, if you're not, then it's your fault. It comes back on you. It comes back on you. Joel, you got to have a story about that. I'm sure your first time taking over, and even from the military, doesn't matter, in management, your first time you get that lead position or supervisor, man, that night that's going through your head. You got to have that meeting with everybody, your team. I think that's got to be one of the most nerve-wracking things to talk to that new team. I'm sure you got an experience, Joe.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things that happened to me was when I first picked up NCO. I got NCO in the Marine Corps.
Right.
Because you're in the lower ranks. Because usually when you get sergeant or staff NCO, you become a staff sergeant or something, you get that promotion and then you're gone within a month or two because they got a new spot for you to go to. However, when you're in the lower ranks, when you're from a nice corporal and below, you're hanging out with the boys. You make those. You show a little bit of leadership. Obviously the command likes you; they're going to promote you.
Right.
But you're still there with the boys, and then you get promoted. Then you got to help convince your guys. That I think that's the hardest part. Because when I picked up sergeant, staff sergeant, it wasn't an issue. I just went over there. I'm like, hey, this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen like this. Not a problem. When I picked up corporal, that was a problem because my buddies are all Lance corporals, and they were like, yeah, man, you're gonna hook us up, man. You're gonna do all this, and I come in, they're showing up late. I'm like, yo, man, why are you showing up late? You weren't doing this when I was the Lance corporal with you guys. We were showing up on time. He's like, oh,
yeah, man, with your friends,
bro. Yeah. Got us, I'm like, no, guys.
In some ways, that can be much more difficult because you've been in that previous position. It's hard to hey, look, I'm in charge now. There's a level of authority to it, so it can be hard to find that line after the fact.
It is. It's really hard, and you got to put that line down, because if you don't
right off the bat,
early,
don't nip it. Deontay, in your field, even with sales and sales and business management, like manager you do, and you're going to clients and customers, I still feel that is you have to stand out. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to really, and you're learning too, I'm sure, and you learn from everybody else.
Yep.
Because they're going to pick up on that.
No, they 100% do. For me, I think the first thing is I always research every company that I go into first. So if I'm meeting with that supervisor, I want to know a little bit about their business. One of my things is if you go into any website, usually they'll have a blog page or different updates or different goals for the company. So it's always good to go in with that mindset of, hey, I know what your business is geared to, and I know kind of where your business wants to go. And my job ultimately is I want to help you hit your production goals, to hit your financial goals. So I think when you start talking to, especially people in operations, a lot of times supervisor who are, maybe running the warehouse, things like that, I want to be able to speak to what they care about, which is, production. They don't necessarily care about all the back end stuff or anything like that. They want to know how, my company can benefit him or her. So,
because when you got sales, I'm telling you, I don't know about you, but I love sales, but you had that salesperson that you always were like, this guy's been in the business for 20 years. And when he walked in, it's like he shines. He freaking sits down with his fancy shoes, and they sit down. You're like, and every word that comes out of their mouth, it's so calm. And you're saying to yourself, God, I want to be like that. God, that's how I want to be. And that's where I think it all begins, like a mentor. When you see somebody in sales, or when you see in logistics or in the military, it was the same thing, man. I want to be like this guy, man. Oh my God. It's
about charisma, I think, feeling comfortable.
I like that. Yeah.
If you do the proper research and if you put the proper work in, I guess you would say, it should come natural to a point. Some people are made for it, some people are not, but you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I still walk into situations where I might not know the best answer, or even the right answer or anything like that. Right. So you got to be comfortable in those type of environments to say, hey, listen, I might not have the correct answer, the answer you're looking for right now, but I'll tell you what, I'll go find it.
I think you need to. And Daryl says he's in Texas. He's a great guy here. And he says, I read the financial reports if it's a public traded company.
Yep.
That's a good one.
As
you should. Absolutely. Joel, when you went back to when you were talking about, when you've transferred over to that part of being a new leader, now you're the supervisor of the guys. That there brings back a lot of memories, because again, I love saying, if you don't nip it in the butt, if you let something drive, and this still does it, I'm a lot better. But if it's driving you crazy and you haven't confronted that issue, it will drive you friggin' insane, and you're going to get stressed. You take it out on your family, you take it out on your poor little dog. It's driving us. But if you confront that issue, you're going to feel so much better.
One of the hardest parts about, one is promoting a new supervisor, and one being a new supervisor or manager, again in that position, is having those hard conversations with the employees and the people under you, particularly if it's something like you said that you don't like. You want to be able to sit there and, like you said, nip it in the bud. Make sure that they're not doing what you don't like.
Yeah.
As long as it's within, of course, company policy and everything like that. You also
that's exactly when you got to follow. If they don't. If you haven't taught them about the company or the process, and you can't just say, I'm going to fight, you think you can, but there's a lot of things, that steps that you got to go through, and you learn there again. Like if I said something to a supervisor, you can't say that. Oh, I'm sorry. But you're not going to learn if you don't.
One of I have a funny story. I just got out of the military, just retired.
Right.
Got the job up here in PA. They moved me up here. We go through, and I've just been there for 2 months, and we're doing full inventory, which means we shut down everything for 2 days. You do complete inventory of the entire warehouse. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll figure out where that's it. I'm not going to say the company name on here, but if you look at my profile, you'll know where it's at.
Right.
And we go through it, and I happen to find a thing of mixed parts. And I took it, and I did the whole, staff NCO thing where I take have a meeting, I throw it on the ground like, what's this? It's bad parts. And I got pulled in. Manager was like, yeah, you're not in the military. You can't do that anymore. You can't yell at the whole group.
Oh, you were going like that crazy on a thing. Oh my God.
We have policies here.
I found out you can't do that. That was a big learning thing for me when I got out of the military.
Yeah, you kind of learn that you got, especially I got out of the military and I went into my parents. I was their bosses at the paper industry. My brothers were too, all of us. And it was a union shop and it was tough. These guys had 20, 30 years in there and you're freaking 21, 22 and you got to tell them what to do. Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Man, you learned how to play both sides of those fence because, and the thing that would get me is, again, as I made these mistakes, is if you say one thing to them and then if you say something to your team, that is nothing but headed for trouble all the time.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, I mean, you agree with that, Dante? I mean,
I think
it'll do it.
I think back to your earlier point, you know, one of my favorite things, and this goes for life and just work or life in general. But people don't know what they don't know. That's been the struggle of mine throughout a lot of my career and a lot of my personal life is, you know, you have expectations that people are supposed to, or you assume that people are supposed to know. If they don't know what they're doing wrong, they're going to keep doing that wrong. So like Joel said, nip it in the bud as early as possible. It's going to eliminate a lot of frustration. And it's going to create a better work environment going forward. But yeah, that's just me.
That's you. Joel, what kind of manager are you? Hands-on? Are you with a team? You get dug in there or what? I'm gonna ask you.
I drive a Tesla. I'm lazy.
Yeah, see, that's true.
I'm hands off, man. I am not a micromanager. The only time I'll ever micromanage somebody is if I'm actually training them and get them to do the right thing. You know, and it's like, hey, I'm going to train you for a little bit. I'm going to teach you how to do this. It's all right. Don't worry about it. We'll make this happen. And the only other time is when I got a really, you know, part of my language, but a piss poor employee. Employee, I'm going to be all up and down your neck, you know, your throat. Like, why isn't this happening? Why isn't this? I'm not going to be screaming, but I'm like, hey, man, you need to get this fixed. Like, you know, until I start getting the right stuff out of you, or you're not going to cut it.
You're not going to cut it. Matt, I think Dante just said that. You don't know what you don't know. Didn't you just say that?
Yep, you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
How's it going? Matt was on the show the other night. We were talking.
Yeah, I watched it too. It was awesome. I was a little
it's always just like any kind of mistakes or anything like that with staffing, and he's a great guy to talk about it with. Because even staffing, that's why I don't have any hair anymore. It drives you,
it's going
friggin' insane. It'll drive you insane. I mean, you got people, and to me, I'm sorry, maybe I'm OCD from the military, but my family is first impressions to me are the most, right?
Oh, yes.
So that day when you're coming in, you're going to take over that management spot. That's where I think it starts from your leadership. You need to meet everyone on the team, everyone, not just a couple people, and then you start out. I really believe that you really need to be introduced, man, all the way around throughout the whole team, not just one day. Oh, this is Joel. Okay, this is her. You got to put the investment because they're going to learn from you.
Right. Exactly.
Throw them into the fire. You're going to make the mistakes that I made too. Listen, I'm making a lot of mistakes, I'm saying, but I'm not afraid to admit it. I made those mistakes. You know,
that's why you're great now.
Yeah, like why did I say that? You know, you say in your mind, you can't say that. Or if you get mad and you're angry, like Joel, you want to throw something. Mm-hmm. Joel, how do you prevent that from happening? Come on, what do you do there?
What, from throwing something?
Yeah.
Oh, baby, that's a lot of restraint. There's a lot of self-discipline right there. But no, it's going. It's you know, bigger than training. You just got to be able to, you know, you're going to make those mistakes. You know, think about the mistakes that you could make,
right?
And look at the steps in order to avoid those mistakes based on past experiences. Like you said before, you know, all of us have made the same mistakes. We've all have done the same mistakes in one scenario or another. It's the exact same mistakes. Now that we have matured a little bit, we've gotten older, we have evolved. We can look at what we can do to help prevent those mistakes. Look at the steps that you did to help prevent those mistakes and get into that situation where, okay, I'm going to the same spot where I made this mistake before. How can I not do this? What are
to do it?
I do.
No, that makes total sense on there.
And one other thing.
Oh, good. No, good.
Talk to somebody. Talk to your boss.
Yeah.
Go up to him like, hey, you know, boss, hey, I got a question. I'm having issues with this. You know, what would you do in this situation? Because they've probably been in the company a lot longer than you and could probably help you out in that situation.
And again, they're watching you. They are watching you from the time you walk in. If you're coming in late all the time, you're doing anything against what you're trying to supervise on, they are watching, and they'll call you out on that, and the way you act. Dante, I know you're gonna know what I mean by this, but you could be talking to your team, and then if they overhear you talking to the management team in a different way, you know what I mean?
Nope,
like
I agree.
you could be not downgrading, but you got to be a real careful there of what you're saying, because I've had it happen. They'll call you out.
You should always keep a uniform, I think. I mean, especially if they, in that kind of situation, if they were to overhear that, you're going to lose a lot, respect. You're going to lose a lot of chemistry with your team. And that's just going to lead to, if you are already having issues with, one or several employees, it's just going to lead to, creating even more issues with that. I think honesty is important. There's obviously, frustrations occur, and there's ways of going about it to, that are appropriate.
Right.
But it's okay to, to approach your employee like, hey, this is what I'm seeing from you that needs to be a little bit better. And how you're speaking to them should be in a professional tone. At the end of the day, they're at work, just like you're at work. We're all professionals in a sense. And, as long as you handle it professionally, you should have employers in place, or you should have put employees in place that can take that constructive criticism and be better from it.
Yep. Daryl says, as far as people, Max was 43 people on 24/7 rotations, independent on location, spread all over 250-mile radius of center. Learn your people, learn their interests, learn their motivators, hold a high bar.
Love it.
That was basically almost what you were saying there, right towards about people watching you. And that is when learn their interests, learn their motivators. That's about learning about your people. Yeah. About learning about your team.
And if you do that, that's going to make those conversations a lot easier when there are mistakes happening. So if you took the time to get to know your workers, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable, or maybe it's, to your point, you won't have as many of those butterflies when you're going to approach for those tougher conversations.
I like that, butterfly.
Yeah.
Butterfly. You know that word. All right, Joel, you want to take this one here? It's clear.
Oh yeah. Set clear expectations and learn you are a servant to those above and those
servant. I like that.
That's a magic thing right there. You're right there, stuck in the middle. Yeah, you got to be a servant to the boss, make sure that stuff is happening, but you also got to be a servant to your employees too. And it was one of my mentors. In fact, we need to reach out to him, see if he'll hop on with you, David. His name is Ben Brooks.
Right.
He was a mentor for me. He's the one that got me into Toastmasters. And he said that there's two things that people want. They want to be heard, and they want to have their needs met.
Yeah.
And as you being in a manager position, you have to make sure that that they're getting heard from what they want, and then that their needs are being met.
Right. And I agree totally. That makes total sense. I mean, even Daryl says again here, set clear expectations. That's another right there. That tells it right there. Expectations. Learn you are a servant again to those above and those report to you. I got to throw one out there, guys. I think you're all going to agree with it. Is favoritism when you're a new boss. When you're a new manager, you're taking over. You got your favorites.
Oh yeah.
Let's face it, the ones that know everything. Your go-to people. How do you think you should deal with that? What advice? Joel, you want to go on that one, and we'll.
Yeah. So I'll give a perfect example. One of the jobs I had my neighbor's kid works with me.
Right.
And of course, everybody's going to think that, I'm going to be the favoritism to him. It's like, okay, it's going to be a little tough, but luckily my neighbor's, my best friend, so I can tell him everything that's happening with his kid that he's at work with. And I remember my boss coming up, he goes, don't play favoritism. Like, I'm not playing favoritism. If he works, he works. If he doesn't work, he doesn't work. But, on the flip side, when we go home on the weekends, I'm having a beer with him, like, hey, man, really need to get, start getting a little bit better and everything. So, well, you keep putting me on, crap detail. I'm like, well, that's because you're not working well.
Yeah.
Well, give me this job. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll put him on a job he didn't do well. I'm like, hey, I'm not doing that again. Sorry, no favoritism. Can't do favoritism. But it's really hard to break away from that. It goes back to when you're in the trenches with everybody, then you get promoted, like from lance corporal to corporal, and you're like, guys, sorry, I can't. We can hang out like on the weekends off duty, but on duty it's strictly business.
What do you feel about that, Dante?
Yeah, I think in a sense you're never going to be able to get away from. There's just people that are employees or coworkers that you click with better than other employees, and that's just natural. The important part is to understand that everyone is being treated the same. I own a cigar lounge actually back in Columbia, PA.
Right.
And for the startup of it, I had my younger brother working for me, and it was the first time in a situation like that. And I think in his third shift, he showed up maybe 30 minutes late. It was important to let him know that, hey, we're related. I get that, but you have to abide by the same terms as everybody else. 3 times, 4 times, it could get to the point where I will let you go. I'll let you go just the same as everybody else. I can't treat you any differently than the other workers that we have here.
That is the truth there, and that's a tricky.
Laws, I mean, you're talking laws in place with that. I mean, obviously, you can't really do that.
Back
to extreme, So
yeah, when I got out of the military, and I was my mom and dad's boss in the paper industry, my other brother was in the office. He had got promoted, and there was a union shop. My dad got injured on the one machine he was using. He wasn't supposed to be using a hammer. It was supposed to be using the other type of hammer to pound these things in, and he hurt his finger. So he had to be written up. So the superintendent said, Dave, you got to write your dad up. And I said, that wasn't on my shift. And he said, Ed's like, I don't care. I said, Ed, that's my dad. I said, I got to write him up. So he said, yeah. So I'm nervous. I'm like, my dad's been in the union for 30 years. I go out there. I said, listen, I got to pull you in with the shop steward. I got to write for what? He puts up his chest like that. And he's like, I said, because you weren't supposed to be using that hammer. You know that doesn't work like that. I said, yes, it does. You can't use that other thing. I had to end up writing him up. And he was
took care of you for 18 years. And you're going to write me up.
He was fussing. Then his other favorite thing that he would say is, that was his words, like family. Even though we were the bosses, if you were to call off sick, I had to ask him first. I'm not kidding, because he would be like, son, you get paid to be sick. He says, only in America you get paid to be sick. So why do you call off? He said, go to work, you make money when you're sick. I'm like, okay, Dad, I ain't going across that one. But no, family is tough. When you have it, and even in logistics, when you're having hundreds of people, and you look at, I don't believe they put enough training into the leaders, the management, and that's even coming from myself. You know what I mean? I really believe companies need to set some goals of what you're going to do, not just, all right, we promoted you, and that's it. That's the end. Yeah, you're learning from every day that goes on. I really believe back in the day, I'm going to say, we used to have people come and give us talks. It's not like the webinars and everything going on like that now, but you would learn from people. They would bring people in. So I don't know how you feel about that, Joel. I mean,
what do you mean by bringing people in for?
Yeah, it's about talking to people. Like, about training? Like, what type of training do you believe? I mean, the company should have.
Like I said, in the military, they give you plenty of training and everything. But when you go into in the civilian world, when you get the training, there's not really a whole lot that goes into it. They're basically, hey, congratulations, you're promoted. This is what you're going to do. Most people, if you get promoted from within a company, you kind of know what's going to happen. You kind of know, you kind of have that little bit of training. And the hardest part, I think, is for people who get thrown into those positions is just trying to learn what their new job is. I don't think there's clear expectations or KPIs are set forth from management in order to know what that is. You got to know what your KPIs are and how you're going to handle your team. That's where I think the biggest training comes into handling people. It really comes down to that, because if you go to that old adage that people don't leave jobs, people leave people.
Right.
And if you're going to promote somebody, you want to make sure that they're going to still be able to keep the rest of those people there with you.
I got a question for you, Dante. If you were to have to write somebody up and you don't feel that it should be a write-up as a leader. Now you got to write somebody up, right? Your boss has been told you got to write this person up, and you don't feel it's right. What do you do?
For me personally, there's two reasons I would do this. If I don't feel that it was necessary, I'm gonna go to bat for my employees, especially if it's a good employee.
Right there. That's what I was waiting for. You passed.
And that's gonna show.
You got it, man. Yeah.
It's gonna do two things. So it's gonna show, another form of leadership to your manager, like, hey, I can handle this. I know what's going on, but it also means the world to your employee if they know that they did that to you, or that you did that for them. So I think it establishes much more rapport, much more chemistry with you and the employees. But it also shows that, you're handling yourself well, and at least your role to your superior. So,
and that'll make that person really friggin' stick up for you too.
Out the roof.
That just comes to you just given. Daryl says no people's strengths assigned to that. Complement their team by assigning others who are strong on their weaknesses. You know, Daryl, I love that. And then he also put on there Pushing Up People by Art Williams. Does anybody?
Oh, I know Art Williams. Yeah.
Do you know who is Art?
Art Williams is a founder with one of the financial companies. He did a lot of stuff. It actually had a lot of good leadership skills and everything, and how he developed the company and stuff. Yeah, so he has a lot of actually good books that are out there that are pretty good as far as following and helping build you up, and a little bit of knowledge in there too as well.
Do you feel, Deontay, do you feel self-learning? What do you do for yourself if it's not work related? I think I'm going to know this answer where you go. What do you do? How do you learn?
How do I learn? Are you talking just learning in general, or what? In
general, about like to improve yourself with leadership skills and everything like that.
I think there's books. I do a lot of web-based learning, so I'll read different articles that are posted. And a lot of my learning comes from my superiors. So it's not necessarily, done by myself. You do have to take the time on your own to, there's books you can read. There's films you can watch. There's articles you can read. But a lot of the training that I get and the learning that I get is from my superiors. I'm not afraid to go to my boss and ask questions and say, hey, I don't know this. Can you help me out with this? Or I'm lacking here. Can you help me out with that as well? So
I think it's fine. It shows you're
learn
human.
On your own, but also be willing to lean on your support system as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the TED Talks. I love listening to TED Talks. Just watching them. If I can, I'll listen to it. There's so many good things on leadership. You're like, because they have to jam everything within 20 minutes like that. And if you can keep the attention span of 20 minutes going on, that's a really strong thing. What do you do, Joel?
YouTube? I listen to YouTube? No, I haven't done TED Talks in a while. I need to get back into that. Yeah. I remember I reflect back to this. It's kind of funny. This is going to be so nerdy of me too. And if you know any of my Facebook profile, I'm into this. Like it's Star Trek. I revert back to Captain Kirk and Captain Picard. I
knew it. I knew it was going to be something.
Yeah, I watched those like religiously when I was a kid growing up, and I was like, oh man. And when I got into the Marine Corps, and because it's our military base, I used to watch that and rewatch the shows, and like, oh man, that's how they handle that situation. I've been in it. Obviously not fighting aliens or anything like that.
Right.
How they handle the crew. If the crew's acting up, how do they handle it? And it was way better. And then now that I've gotten older and I've evolved more, I've been listening to Jim Rohn, Art Williams, and listening to some other books that have actually helped me to develop better leadership skills and everything.
On that part.
Matt's got a great point here.
Yeah, he does. Always keep in touch with managers you respect outside of the company for an outside perspective.
That's a very good point.
I love that.
Matt, I love it. I know what he's talking about there, because I think if you know when you read this, if you understand what he's saying, I've done a lot of that.
Yep.
I'd be a lot of that, because I think sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, you can always talk outside of work too. There's the difference. You're in your work and you're outside, and somebody can be real honest to you. And if that's what I'm thinking that he's talking about, does that sound?
Yeah, I think you're hitting on the outside perspective is key. Going directly to your manager, you're going to get a bit of a little bit of skewed feedback. But if you can go to someone who's in a management position outside of your work, they're going to have nothing but honest feedback for you. I would hope so, if you have a good relationship. Right. So you can really have it unbiased, and they're going to be able to tell you if maybe you were in the wrong and you didn't feel that way, or if maybe they think you're in the right, and you can kind of reconfirm your own thoughts. So I think that makes a great point there.
For that,
so one of the things, probably the biggest keyword out all of this is networking.
Yes.
Networking, and not just mean like going out and reaching out to some new manager or something. Like when you leave a company, say you leave on good terms or it's bad terms, but you're still friends with some of the managers. Because I still talk to managers from the first company I left with.
Yeah, I do.
And I just we reach out to them. I have a beer with them every now and then. Granted, it's like several months in between, but we'll catch up and we'll talk. And it's just like you were saying, Deontay, you're just like, reach out to them, talk with them, and figure out what's going on.
Yep.
What's going on. And that's Daryl says podcast, reading. Oh, yeah. I think everybody nowadays, you have so many tools that I feel when you are a leader, it's going to gravitate you towards it anyway. You're going to love seeing things like that because you can relate to it. It's your pain points. And one of the other things that I wanted to discuss too is, I think you'll agree here, trying to fix all the problems at once.
I have that. I have that written down as well.
Oh yeah, you want? Well, go ahead, take it on out on that. But
I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I guess a new supervisor, or biggest mistakes a new supervisor would make is you get in there, you want to show you're the right choice, and you kind of get into the superhero mentality where I'm going to fix everything in the next 2 weeks, and then what happens? You get overwhelmed, and I've done this myself in the past as well. Trying to do everything at once, and it can get very overwhelming, and it can almost have, in a sense, a negative effect. So, if instead of doing the first task at 100%, you're trying to do 9 tasks and only getting 20% done, which is it's not good. So
that's where it comes in the KPIs, everything. When you learn, and Joel, like when you talk about there, I mean, I always say, listen, when somebody new takes over, you don't really know how they are yet. So, they'll come in, and you got to gradually, you're going to take that week or two of just sitting back, and you're going to watch, you're going to go home, think, and then it hits you. You agree, Joel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny. I want to see if you have a story too, David, on this, like being in the military, seeing somebody get promoted, and you're like, I would not do that like this. Do you have one?
No, I mean, I know what you're talking about. Because are you talking about like when somebody did and you were like, why, or like, why them, not me?
Yeah, well, you see like somebody in your company, like your platoon, they get promoted, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to never.
Oh, I know, especially when they take over. Oh my God, it's like it turns on a dime.
Yeah,
I mean, you're going from an E3 to an E4 or E5, and you're like, whoa, man, you go too fast. It goes a little too fast, I say. Some work starts, they scare the living hell out of me. Military, they say, whoa.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was like, I've had situations where I watch some of my peers get promoted, and they just like everything just gets fumbled up. Like for example, they'll try to like march us to some place, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to formation march." I'm like, why would you do that when you know everybody hates doing this? Nobody wants to do this whatsoever. Like you're taking us on a run. Nobody wants to do a run. Like, oh man, I'll never do this if I'm in charge.
No, and they, the thing in the military is what I took away a lot is. They scare the living hell out of you. Some of the leaders, but in a good way, because you could, you have a person like a first sergeant scares a little. I don't care if you were nervous of a first sergeant because they were the E8s, E9s, and they were a leader. I don't know. It's just something about them. The way you said, persona, they represent themselves. And then all of a sudden they let their guards down too. And then you could go in and you could really talk like, wow, this guy is freaking normal, But when you reverse those shoes, you understand why.
Yeah.
And I think that was my biggest takeaway. I don't know about you, Joel, for the military, but just scare the living hell out of me.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I have a very funny story from boot camp. And in Marine Corps boot camp, you're a recruit. You talk a third person. You're broken down. You're not even a maggot. All right. You're the trash maggots eat. And we were at the rifle range one time, and I'm skinny now, and I was even skinnier back then when I went to boot camp. Like, the senior drill instructor calls me over, recruit Vi, come here. I'm running, like, recruit Vi, orders here, and he's like, here. He starts handing me like this food, eat this. Like, I'm away from the platoon behind his like personal vehicles. Like, here, eat this. And he starts talking to me. He's like, got golf clubs. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, Vi. I'm never going to go golfing again. I'm a drill instructor. I hate it. I'm like, what do I say to this? Like, I don't know, sir. Keep going at it.
Keep going and keep going.
Cookies and shit. I don't know what to do.
Don't know what to do.
He's pouring his guard out. I'm like, wow. And you just get stuck. Like the man he let his guard down.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I pulled the boss. I gave him a little bit of advice. I was like, I tried to go back to what you enjoy, sir.
You did.
What you enjoy, I guess. Yeah.
Carol says here, best to observe the first 30 days, build a list of issues and work them on the brain.
Yes.
Exactly.
That right there. That's perfect, Daryl. That's exactly what happened. Like when in the position the company I'm at right now, that's exactly what happened. I didn't go in there guns a-blazing or anything because you're new to the company. If you get promoted within completely different but still do the same thing, if you just get hired to a company as a manager, you don't know how the company runs. You don't know anything about it. I mean, you could research it in the background, but I guarantee you, like if you research my company, I'm gonna bring you into the company. Like, hey, go ahead and make this robot run and cut parts.
Yep. No, it is.
You know how to do it.
Yep. You're not. It comes up with making a plan, and And I think that if you don't, it's going to show. It's going to
Exactly.
show. Dante, how do you feel, Dante, when a new manager would take over, and you always have that one employee that's going to give you a hard time? That one employee that's just going to
from the perspective of being the new manager.
Yeah, but being a manager, what kind of advice probably if anything's happened to you like that you would give somebody when somebody's really pushing your buttons?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it goes back to the open and honest conversation. If you know you got a hard suit, it's about setting that example. I think one of us may have mentioned it earlier, setting that example or nip it in the bud early. I think that was you, Joel. But nip it in the bud early, like, hey, this is this is what I expect. This is how I expect it to be done. Is that going to be an issue, or how can we best work together to make sure that at the very least we're getting the production that we need out of both yourself and myself?
Especially it's one-on-one basically. I think you really you got to jab that in there again.
I've had situations in the past, and this is not necessarily me. This is a manager that I've had in the past who would they would really make it a point during meetings to really get on someone, and I think that's probably the worst way you could go about it, because that's only going to lead to more bad behavior, more.
You had to sit there in your mind saying, "I would not do this."
I mean, I'll sit there, especially being in sales. I don't know if you guys have ever, Dave. I know you have a little bit of experience with sales and stuff like that, but some of these managers, they can be rough, man. I mean, they can get on you, they can break you down. I've heard, I can't mention it here on the live, but I've heard in some of these meetings that I just don't agree with. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think you pull them aside one-on-one. Yeah. Hey, this is what I expect. How can I help you to perform in the job? Like, let's work together here, kind of deal. But that's pretty much the best.
The whole team feels it. The whole team feels it.
Exactly.
I've been there. I think everybody's done that. You're like, whoa, and then everybody's like, okay.
Yeah, the tension in the room can be devastating.
With that one-on-one, I think that's where it's got to be really brought up.
Again, there's a level of respect that you need to have. Yeah.
Joel, you had something on that?
No, I mean, you could go in there like, so here's the double-edged sword to that as well. To caveat on that is, you can go in there, you have that one-on-one with that manager that you don't agree with, but at the same time as well, they're the boss.
Yeah.
You got to go with what they, and if they're a horrible boss, you can tell them, give them some advice, like, hey, I would recommend not doing this because the guys on floor don't like this. I don't personally like it myself. You can always have that conversation, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to do what the boss tells you to do. I mean, if you want to keep dropping, keep getting that money to pay bills, and if you like to eat, you're going to keep doing it.
I tell people that all the time too. At the end, listen, I'll voice my opinion as I evolve, as I get older. I think the way you come back and approach it, and you talk to your manager about that. But at the end of the day, if he says no, you got to do it. You have a choice. You do it or you don't. You leave. I mean, written up. That's your own fault. And I've tried to be. I was that defiant one sometimes, and I was like, "No, I'm right. No, I'm right." Yeah, and
me too.
But the biggest thing that I've learned, and I don't, you guys might agree with this, some of the most negative people within your team. That's always. It doesn't work that way because of blah, 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 blah. Some of the most negative people always have the best ideas if you really actually listen to what they're saying.
Sometimes, yeah.
That's because they're the only ones thinking of other ways to get it done. If you're,
you got to go back. I've done a couple times. I'll be like, that damn Daryl. I'll be like, Jesus, what the hell did he say? He's
if you're just a cog in the machine, I mean, you're just kind of clocking in, clocking out, tunnel vision it. Sometimes that seed that kind of gives you the headache. Oh, you know what? Maybe you do have a point here.
It is. Yeah. That says praise in public, coach in private.
I love how he says that. He says praise in public, coach in private, not reprimand in private. Yeah. Coach in private. I love how he said that, Nat.
Praise in public.
Awesome.
All right, coach in private. Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't what because that's like saying you're sitting at the table, like you said, Dante. You're sitting at that table and somebody's drilling at that person. And we've all been there, I think. But that Matt comes up with pretty good. I wonder if he's using AI.
This isn't even Matt. This is just AI.
Yeah, he's using Matt. Dante, I'm sure you have a subject of leadership that you want to bring up. I'm sure.
Yeah, we've actually covered a fair amount that I had come prepare with. I think what I was gearing to is a couple different A couple different things to touch on. And one of my big ones was, we might have touched on it a little bit earlier, but it was when you're getting that first weekend or that first 30 days in, it's important to come out with smart goals. Smart goals meaning they're attainable, they're achievable, and they're realistic. So it's and I think Matt also mentioned this earlier as well. But you get in there that first 30 days, you observe, and you come up with a list of things that need to get done, needed to either improve or be better. And then you prioritize that list, and it kind of intertwines with the not trying to fix everything at once. And it's make that list. What's number one? What's number two? Number three? Number four? Etc. And handle it that way. I don't know if you guys can speak to kind of your process of, maybe a time that you started a new job and how you went about undertaking that role.
I believe a lot on the one-on-ones. Like when you first take over, I believe that you should sit down with the person on your team, and maybe 20 minutes after work, 5 o'clock or whatever, call them in, or hey, let's just do a one-on-one. My one boss had me doing that, and at first I was like, but you know what? You really learn a lot by this. Just listening, because I didn't do enough of this, of listening, and then before you say something. But by learning the strengths of a person, just by talking to them, like if I had you in the office, I'd be like, all right, you're in sales. And tell me about yourself, just like we're doing a show. Tell me about yourself. What do you do? What do you like outside of the place? Get to know that person. And then I believe in time, you're going to see that weakness, because they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you, well, you can tell by their, I should say, where they say something, their body language, everything. When you're talking that one-on-one. That's me. I believe, the plan of naturally not going in and changing of things, even if you were a lead, a supervisor there, you got to be careful with that. Put the brakes on and just listen. Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to go in and you want to make changes, don't do grand changes. That one-on-one time is very critical as well. I like what you were talking about that, David. When you're talking about bringing the people in and sitting them down, I like to refer to it in the military too. We used to do the initial counseling. You went to a new unit and stuff like that, and everybody gets, oh yeah, that's what the military does. It actually works out. I've had a lot of positive feedback when I do it to all my employees too. When I got here, there was no if you go to any company, 9 times out of 10 they don't do any reviews, they don't do anything like that unless somebody's being bad.
Right.
So I began to start implementing the policies where we're starting to do initial reviews. When people come in 90 days, they're getting their initial reviews, and every 6 months I'm bringing them in. Hey, here's the KPIs, here's where your production rates are, here's where you're doing. And I've gotten a lot of feedback. And it's obviously one-on-one. I'm not bringing like a whole crew in, like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing this. No, you bring them in one-on-one, sit them down, and that's when you get them to open up a little bit. Hey, how's it going? How's everything happening? How's your family? And if you're on the floor, if you're on the floor and you're talking with your employees, they're going to tell you what's happening too. You're like, hey man, how was your weekend? What were you doing? Like, oh, I was doing this, taking care of my dad. Oh, really? What's going on with your pops, man? What's up? What's happening? And they'll tell you, and that's why their production's low. They got their families on the, they're thinking about their family. They're not thinking about work. Okay, cool.
Well, especially when you learn about with the family, something's going on. If you see one of your team members struggling, I believe there again, as they evolve, I would sometimes overlook it, like, well, that's just that person. And maybe I don't like that person. You know what I mean? Like you say so many different things, but as you evolve, it's like, no, wait a minute here. This is wrong. You might not like that. You might not like that person. You like Jill here, Bobby here, but this one gives you a hard time. You might ignore it. Don't ignore that person, because if they're struggling, it's a power play. Kind of, you shouldn't have that in there. You should be able to just back up and say, wait a minute, Dave, I'm screwing up here, man. That person's struggling. I need to help them. Then let them come back. Maybe they need to vent to you. Maybe they need to vent to you. Say, down to, I don't know this. Nobody's ever showed me. And that's a big thing. When they say nobody's ever showed you, you're like, oh my God, I'm so wrong.
And that's where you miss a step. And I'll tell you what, I've been in thousands of warehouses. I've met with thousands of supervisors, and you can always tell what supervisors are doing it right and what supervisors are doing it wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
You see it in the interactions as you walk through the warehouse, and there's a guy, you have one guy's walking through and nobody will even lift their head up, or no one wants to peek, and you have another supervisor going, Joel, how's the family? The kids doing well?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lucy, how's it going? And you can see that energy. And I see the difference in how people work and how productive they're being. And when you have that kind of chemistry with, and that goes back to Dave, your one-on-ones, you know, if you're having those, you're going to create that chemistry, and then your employees are going to want to work harder. I mean,
and I've learned it from all the leaders, like everything that I've learned from them. I didn't do one-on-ones. I didn't see no importance of it. Sometimes you get that leader that's only in your life for about a year or less, but you really, I wish I could do this sometimes. I wish I could be like, wow, I'd like to have something that Joel knows, a piece of that action, something that you know, and you could just mold that perfect person, you know, that you're lacking in skills, because some of the things I'm like, wow, man, they got some skills there. I don't. We're going to wrap it up here, but Joel, on an elevator speech here for yourself, what do you recommend somebody for leadership skills for a new supervisor going in? If you had to give that advice.
Yeah, if you're going in and you're getting promoted or something, read books on leadership, read different articles that are out there. Look at first develop yourself. Figure out what leader you are. Are you hands-on, hands-off? Do you not know what you are? If you don't know what you are, definitely read. If you know what you are, read. Do audiobooks if you can. If you don't like reading, audiobooks. Do something that is going to help develop you in that position that you're going into.
There you go. And that's awesome. Deontay, yourself, how would you like to say here?
Yeah, I'll piggyback up. I think Abel is my favorite quote, always be learning. So when you get into that position, you never know everything. So always be willing to continue your learning progression. And having those pinpoints, you know, make sure you have that plan in place. Take the time, like for your one-on-ones, get to know your workers, create that chemistry. And to Joel's point, there's a line between micromanaging and being able to have that support, and getting to know your workers is going to help you find that line. You might have someone that don't like the bug on their shoulder, always looking. You might have some that feel like they need that for their support system in their workplace. So I think always learn your company, learn your position, and learn your people, and then you get better as you go.
My input of it would be, to listen. I'm going to read all the mistakes. I'm going to think of all the mistakes I made. Communication, listen, look at your team, get to know your team. Like even Matt was saying there, on the outside, even a little bit, what they do, learn about their families, provide the training that you need to provide. If you really like firing people and you love that power play, you should not be in a management role. Sorry, you need to be grounded or taken out. The micromanaged person, you're not always right. Admit when you're wrong. It's okay. I've come out sometimes, if I knew I was wrong, I would call it. I'd be like, all right, everybody, I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And that really took that person's back. Like, all right, he admitted it.
Big struggle.
That's very
important. Yeah, I think as a leader, if you tell your people that, and be that first impressions, showing you're nervous. It's okay to be nervous. My stomach still gets chills. Like HR scares the living hell out of me. Because HR does not just call you to say, Dave, you're doing a great job.
Nope.
Come on, it's true. They call you in there and it's like, we're promoting you, doing a great job. Yeah, right. But no, that's a leader to me. It's like, it's okay to be nervous and all that, and I enjoyed the show tonight. I think we talked a lot about a lot of things, and let me take some messages off here. I commented on there. Great show, guys. Dante, for the first time tonight, you did great, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was always a good time. I love to listen to the couple shows I've been on, so it's been a pleasure to be on it.
Yeah, and anybody? Yeah, Joel, it's a lot of fun. You get to learn, and these are the kind of things right here that you can walk away with learning something. Yep. Just one little thing that somebody said. You pick up on that. You might go to work tomorrow. You'll be like, all right, I'm going to try something different.
Yep.
Try it on that. So, all right, guys, we'll be. I'm going to show this video, and we'll talk right after this. So, have a great night, everybody.
See you guys.
Yep. See you.